Good afternoon, I'm Vashan Brown with the Midday News. A special welcome if you're watching on onespotmedia.com. Running out of space, that caution from the health minister as COVID-19 cases continue to soar. His comments come against the backdrop of 98 positive cases over a 24-hour period, the largest single-day rise since the outbreak in March. Krista Campbell reports.
98 new COVID-19 cases in a 24-hour period between Wednesday and Thursday, and 53 of those cases are from Kingston and St. Andrew. As Health Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton prepares for even more spread of the virus, he's warning that home quarantine may soon be the norm. He says close to 29,000 persons are currently quarantined at home, and hospitals and other government facilities are running out of space.
The field hospital is on the table still, and in fact there are discussions taking place with a bilateral partner around sourcing this facility. And at the same time, however, the discussions around expanding areas for quarantining or isolation outside of the hospital setting, as I had said earlier, that is ongoing.
10 of the new cases are from the backlog extending to early July. That's now been cleared up. The other 88 cases were taken from samples over a 2-day period. The chief medical officer says the new positives would have been infected over the Emancipendence holiday period from August 1 to 6.
We know that there were a number of gatherings and parties at that time, and we believe that some of what this is happening now 2 weeks later is as a result of those activities there. So we're always 2 weeks behind whatever event it is that triggered or the activities that triggered what we're seeing now.
And as she again cautions persons against large gatherings, a concession from the health minister about the challenges maintaining crowd control during nomination day on Tuesday.
As you know, this part of our democracy is accompanied by significant festivities, and it is a motivator for participation, which is something you don't want to discourage. I hope that what has transpired during nomination day will certainly cause persons to be concerned and to take the precautions, but not be so discouraging that persons do not participate in the political process, given the importance of the decision.
Moving forward to Election Day on September 3, he says it's up to the candidates to continue to persuade supporters and put measures in place to ensure they follow the COVID safety protocols. Krista Campbell, TVJ News.
And just to let you know that we are awaiting an emergency press briefing from the office of the Prime Minister in response to this significant increase in the number of confirmed COVID-19 cases. Again, 98 confirmed cases over a 24-hour period. As the country recorded its highest number of COVID-19 cases, head of the School of Public Health at the University of Technology, Professor Winston Davidson, wants to see drastic measures taken. A cabinet subcommittee should meet at this time. Professor Davidson says out of that meeting, he's expecting that curfews and lockdowns are among the measures to be taken in specific areas where the virus is widespread.
But generally, right, I would expect that the Jamaican public are going to have to abide by the social distancing and abide by masks, proper masks, and we may have to go back to the most drastic measures where the country as a whole, right, begin to take introduce the necessary measures, especially in relation to the whole community mobilization.
And the Health Ministry has suspended operations at its offices in New Kingston after an employee tested positive for COVID-19. A news release from the ministry says contact tracing has started. The building will be sanitized and reopened on Monday. The ministry's Health Emergency Operations Center, which has been managing the national response to COVID-19, will continue to operate. In a TVJ News follow-up, Tourism Minister Ed Bartlett is defending a recent directive mandating tourists to remain on property and not venture out. Mr. Bartlett insists it had to be done given the rise in the coronavirus cases. O'Shane Masters reports.
The owners of attractions first raised the issue, arguing that all restaurants, attractions, and hotels which have COVID-19 resilience certification from the TPDCO should be allowed to receive tourists. This week, President of the Negral Chamber of Commerce, Richard Wallace, shared a similar view, adding that the government should rethink its policy which mandates guests to remain at their hotel.
Unless the tourists leave the hotel, the local economy does not benefit. So taxi drivers, attractions, shops, craft vendors, none of those people benefit when the hotels are locked up, when the guests are locked up in the hotels. So it's very devastating for the local economy. So we would love for the government to...
He says the fallout has already begun.
There have been many cancellations because of this rule, especially for Negril.
In light of this, the larger all-inclusive properties are mostly benefiting from the tourist arrivals. Mr. Wallace points out that they are, for the most part, foreign-owned. In an interview recently with TVJ News, the tourism minister says the directive was put in place to prevent community spread of the coronavirus.
I'm sorry, and I really regret very much that an order that we made, which should have started on the 7th of August, we have had to retract because of the situation. The spread is here, and if it is here, we have to act. And I think everybody understands this. It's a difficult call, but it's a call that the government had to make.
He says he is mindful of the difficulties being faced by attractions and other tourism-related businesses outside the resilient corridor.
I know that attractions have expended to bring back their properties to an acceptable level, and in the process have expended resources. Workers have actually come back, but we have to work together in this one. We have to manage it together.
O'Shane Masters, TVJ News.
The Social Development Commission says it has come across too many worrying instances where operators of beaches and rivers have been paying scant regard to the COVID-19 protocols. It says patrons too are flaunting the rules in many instances. The SDC held a meeting at its Spanish Town office explaining to operators their concerns. Here is Kirk Wright with that report.
Several checks of rivers and beaches across the island have shown that patrons have largely been paying little regard to the protocols put in place to help halt the spread of the coronavirus. At a meeting Wednesday night, Executive Director of the Social Development Commission, Dwayne Vernon, went further to say there were high levels of non-compliance among rivers and beachgoers. He says in many instances, beaches stayed open for longer than the 6 p.m. cutoff time, and that in too many locations they saw insufficient signs to remind patrons to wear their masks. Another problem, he says, was the lack of markings to facilitate proper physical distancing. The protocol also states that no group of more than 20 persons should be allowed to congregate at any segment of the beach.
But no more than 20 can congregate in any one area. We are not seeing that anywhere. And that is why the next one reads that they need to have some markers, be it cones, be it rope, be it whatever you can use to indicate that in this square, 20 good. Make a space at least 6 feet or so, and next set good. But there's no demarcation at all on the beaches. It's just free for all.
Additionally, chairs should not be provided at beaches and rivers.
Some beaches that do provide chairs, we are seeing that the chairs are still there, and they are not necessarily being sanitized after each user. So you can imagine the issue. So one of the main reasons why we are saying do not provide chairs is that if you don't provide the chairs, you don't have to worry about sanitizing the chair. If I'm bringing my own chair, then that's good.
Activities at these locations are now limited to swimming, bathing, and exercising. But he says that's been flagrantly disregarded.
Most of the beaches that we have been to and rivers, we are seeing parties, we are seeing a lot of events taking place. Next major issue, the protocol reads that vendors shall not be permitted to walk beaches and rivers with items for sale. You are not allowed to walk. You should have a specific vending area with the requisite protocols in place. But what we're seeing at many of the beaches, especially the unregulated ones, and because the protocol applies to those that are regulated as well as those that are unregulated. Unregulated means it's an open space and persons use it as a major beach, but the protocol still applies. So vendors are not allowed to walk, but we are seeing that happening.
For the most part, he says, food establishments on beaches are in compliance, but that they still need to do more sanitizing of the restrooms. Kirkwright, TVJ News.
And we now take a break on the midday news, but please stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Continuing the news now. As schools struggle to reopen amid COVID-19 surge, the Jamaica Teachers Association, JTA, is appealing to the Ministry of Education to ensure that certain things are in place to adjust to the new norm. Past President Owen Speed says the provision of tablets for schools is at the top of the list. Shamela Pullen reports.
During his farewell speech at the Jamaica Teachers Association JTA conference, former President Owen Speed says the Ministry of Education needs to look closely at providing bursaries at the primary level. Mr. Speed says this is critical at this time given the current global COVID-19 pandemic. He says this will help ease the additional burden school administrators will face come September.
Our primary schools at this time are without bursaries, and I believe that that is something that should be speeded up in an effort to take some of the workload off the primary school principals, because accounting by itself is a full-time job, and it is not fair to leave that onto a principal to do and to carry the other duties of providing instructional leadership.
Mr. Speed also wants the Ministry of Education to speed up the process of promised tablets in schools. The former JTA president says this needs to be sorted out before the new school year.
I think that was a matter that we talked about at almost every meeting of the JTA and the Ministry of Education. And we heard your concerns even up to today. And Dr. McLean is here with us tonight, and we want to just say that we would love the distribution of tablets to be speeded up. Indeed, we would like it to be over and done with by the end of this month.
Despite the challenges, Mr. Speed says, the JTA has managed to meet some targets with the Ministry of Education. These include the distribution of thousands of pieces of furniture to schools.
We got close to 20,000 from our count that were distributed, and we are hearing from the ministry that close to another 20,000 should be distributed sometime soon, and it is out of our agitation, and I am sure the willingness of the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information that we are going to be getting some of those.
Meanwhile, Mr. Speed has expressed confidence in the new JTA president, Jasford Gabriel, to carry on the mantle. Shamela Pullen, TVJ News.
And the JTA will be embarking on various training programs and activities for teachers across the island. Speaking at the annual JTA conference in St. James recently, President Jasford Gabriel says the aim is to equip teachers to effectively handle existing and new challenges presented as a result of the global pandemic.
In alignment with this idea, the JTA has already put plans in place to offer psychological and psychosocial support to our teachers across the island through engagement of at least one trained counselor in each of the 4 regions commencing September 2020. The JTA is doing its part. This is in addition to aggressively promoting value-based education and establishing an electronic resource center promoting digital transformation.
And Education Minister Carl Samuda says the ministry is keeping a close eye on what is happening with the island's COVID-19 cases. This as the country has been recording double-digit increases in the numbers over the past few weeks. Mr. Samuda says it could have an impact on the start of the new academic year.
The situation that occurred in St. Thomas is concerning, and appropriate measures have been taken to ensure that we can do everything possible to contain it. So only in circumstances where there is this kind of sudden outbreak that it would give us pause. Other than that, we are fully prepared and ready to reopen schools.
Mr. Samuda, however, noted that no decision has been taken on the reopening of schools. He says discussions will continue between the Education and the Health Ministries as to the way forward. To news on the political scene now, anxiety is high in the St. James Southern constituency as the candidates for the PNP and the JLP continue to prepare for the September 3 general election. The seat, which is considered a marginal one, is being closely watched by many. Anthony Logg reports.
Political pundits believe the battle for the St. James Southern constituency will be a nail-biting finish. The Jamaica Labour Party's Homer Davis will square off with People's National Party's Dr. Walton Small.
What I have here is a team that will carry us through and win the general election.
If I win less than 1,000, I am going to be extremely disappointed.
The seat has been held by PNP's Derek Kellier since the 1989 general election. 2 years ago, he announced that he would not seek re-election, citing ill health as his reason for stepping aside. In his last 3 electoral outings, the party's margin of victory has declined. In the 2011 elections, he won the seat by 1,072 votes. In 2016, he held on to it by a mere 62 votes in a magisterial recount. There have been mixed views as to what led to the decline in votes from PNP supporters. We put the issue to first-time runner Dr. Walton Small.
I am the first to say yes. There are areas that need to be improved. We have been walking the constituency from last year, and I can tell you this. The reception, the enthusiasm, the excitement that is building within the constituency, I have no doubt in my mind, absolutely no doubt in my mind, that I will send Mr. Homer Davis into retirement.
That confidence from Dr. Walton Small, but the results of the last 2 elections will no doubt have persons keeping a close eye on the seat. For the JLP candidate, Homer Davis,
I don't know what the PNP has, but what I do know, there are a lot of uncommitted persons out there who have now indicated to me that they will be supporting my candidacy.
The constituency is geographically the largest of the 5 in the parish of St. James. It's bordered by the constituencies of St. James East Central and West Central, Hanover Eastern, Westmoreland Eastern, and St. Elizabeth Northwestern. Bearing this in mind, Small and Davis say they're committed to fixing the issues highlighted by the constituents.
When I become the Member of Parliament, I am going to fight tooth and nail to ensure that we do not get the same subvention that the other constituencies get, because we need more money.
Close to 60% of South St. James doesn't have running potable water, and that's an area that I will be championing from day one.
Anthony Logg, TVJ News.
Chairman of the People's National Party's Manifesto Committee, Damian Crawford, is blasting those who are criticizing the party's recently released manifesto. Since the document was released, the party has been receiving a series of criticisms, one of which, according to Mr. Crawford, is that it is a giveaway party. And we will return to that story. Now we go to another story where the 2 main political parties have given contrasting approaches for the use of the states of emergency as an anti-crime measure following the September 3 general election. The Jamaica Labour Party has indicated that it may return to the use of the measure. The People's National Party says if it wins the general election, it will not rely on states of emergency for routine crime fighting unless there are extraordinary circumstances. National Security Minister Dr. Horace Chang says if the JLP is re-elected, the circumstances on the ground will determine whether there is an automatic return to states of emergency.
I would say it's an immediate reinstatement. It is a tool that we expect use when necessary and will depend on the advice from the security forces. We will certainly reimpose it if required. It's not automatic. But I'm going to get upset about 5 or 6 and the Prime Minister is sworn in and then he walks over to the CG officer and say another state of emergency for 14 days and then we call leader of the opposition to see if we can agree to proceed. No, that's not how we will operate.
Opposition spokesman on national security Fitz Jackson says a PNP government will implement states of emergency as a last resort.
I can say categorically, as we have said before,
states of emergency is not and ought not to be used as a crime fighting tool. State of emergency is in place to be used for real emergency, things that are not occurring routinely or consistently out of the normal. Like, for example, a pandemic that we have now. That's not normal. It's out of the norm, and you impose state of emergency to give the government the power to take extraordinary steps to control the situation. So what I can say categorically, upon forming the next government, we will not resort to state of emergency to fight crime.
We go back to an earlier story now where the chairman of the People's National Party's Manifesto Committee, Damien Crawford, is blasting those who are criticizing the party's recently released manifesto.
Chairman for the PNP's Manifesto Committee, Damien Crawford, is shutting down criticisms of the party's declaration. In a 5-minute video circulating on social media, Mr. Crawford explained that the party's manifesto seeks to address the necessities of Jamaicans.
This is not a giveaway manifesto. This is a people's manifesto, a necessity manifesto. I'm going to give you a few examples. Now, we said that we're going to make motor vehicles, the ownership of motor vehicles, more accessible and cheaper for members of the police force. Now, you tell me, why is that not right? When it cannot make sense that a police officer is stopping a taxi, then in the afternoon taking the same taxi.
And we now take you to the office of the Prime Minister for an emergency press conference.
1 person hospitalized, including suspected positive cases of COVID-19. We also have 55 persons isolated in government facilities, 336 isolated at home, and 9 quarantined in a government facility. We also have 28,741 persons quarantined at home. Now, I quite well know and understand that most Jamaicans would see this as cause for panic. I would say, yes, it is a cause for serious concern, but not a cause for panic. You will recall in previous press conferences that I have said that we expect that there will be increases in our numbers, particularly as a result of the reopening of our borders and the reopening of the economy towards its full operating capacity. We have also said that now we are in the phase of managing risks, and we have done a very good job in managing the risks of reopening our borders and reopening our economy. We are transitioning into the phase of living with the COVID-19 disease, the coronavirus, which causes the disease. So, yes, it is cause for concern, but there is absolutely no need for panic. The government of Jamaica continues to manage the epidemic on a day-to-day basis, and I personally keep a direct track and a direct hand. We have no distraction, and indeed there is no other matter that we treat more seriously than the management of the pandemic. So you can rest assured that the government continues to make the best decisions in terms of ensuring your safety, but also ensuring your livelihood. So, in keeping with the principle of balancing lives and balancing livelihoods, we see where we have had clusters of concerns emerging in St. Thomas, clusters of concerns we are seeing also cases emerging in the corporate area, Kingston and St. Andrew, and we in fact went as far as to name communities to alert residents in those communities that they need to take additional precautions and to be consistent in following the protocols regarding mask wearing, social distancing, hand sanitizing, gathering rules, etc. So we're seeing a clustering of cases occurring within the corporate area, and the cabinet met this morning to discuss the issues thoroughly, and we got a thorough briefing from the CMO and the Minister of Health and the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Health, and we have decided that we will take some additional measures. So, effective tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. until September 2, 2020, for the parishes of Kingston, St. Andrew, St. Catherine, and Clarendon, the new curfew hours will begin at 7 p.m. in the evening to 5 a.m. the following morning, repeated until September the 2nd at 5 a.m. Why do we use curfew measures in the management of a pandemic? As you all know by now, the virus cannot move on its own. The virus is spread by people who are infected, gathering, greeting, embracing, coming into close contact, but also sharing transportation space and moving about. If we limit movement, we have a greater chance of limiting spread. And the curfew does help to limit movement, particularly at nights, and that has been very effective in the management of the pandemic. But that comes, as you can well imagine, with the added consideration that it does have an impact on the economy. And many persons who work in the quick service industry would be affected. Citizens would now have to readjust their normal schedules. But this is what we have to do if we do not have consistent observation and almost religious following of the infection prevention and control